Today, I'm going to talk about Spider-Man Brand New Day. If you haven't seen any of my long-form videos, I like to examine what takes a movie from good to great. I'm a professional writer, so I focus on script, story, and character arcs, and my first reaction to this movie was that the writing was fantastic. It worked as an action movie, but more importantly, it worked on an emotional level that most movies simply don't. Every choice this movie made was done with intention. Everything that happened was organic, and everything served the theme of the movie. I'll get into what all that means in just a minute. But first, imagine a young male screenwriter who writes an action movie, his first script. Let's say he gets his script to someone who knows what they're talking about. I'm willing to bet that person gives the note, "It needs more heart." Male writers, especially young male writers, have the tendency to focus on action, plot, and the physical journey the character goes through, but skimp on the emotional journey. So they usually tack on a little bit of heart to give the character just enough growth to satisfy the needs more heart note. Think of Die Hard. The heart is that John McClane is trying to rekindle things with his ex-wife. It doesn't dominate the movie or elevate it to the next level, but it fleshes it out and makes him a little more three-dimensional and makes the audience care more, which makes the action better. Then there's John Wick. It had a razor-thin plot and a little bit of heart, but that was enough to create a fun ride. There's nothing wrong with a good popcorn flick that's full of action with a little bit of heart thrown in. But when a movie nails the action and story and makes the emotional journey the point and not just something tacked on, you get something really special. And that's exactly what Spider-Man Brand New Day did. It's the same way The Godfather took the gangster movie to a Shakespearean level, or Jaws elevated a monster movie to a masterpiece. That word nerd English major stuff like theme is pretty cool, even though your high school English teacher probably made you hate it by making you read books you didn't relate to. Okay, so what is theme? If you saw my video on the theme of the original Star Wars trilogy, you'd know theme is the question the film asks, the point the movie makes, or what is this story really about? The theme of Spider-Man Brand New Day is human connection makes us a better version of ourselves. The action and plot of the movie are great, but everything is structured to illustrate the theme. At the end of the last Spider-Man movie, Doctor Strange casts a spell and Peter Parker is wiped from everyone's memory. He lost all human connection. And this movie's about him dealing with that loss. In the beginning, we see him watching videos of Ned and MJ at MIT, and they have no memory of him. This is heartbreaking. We're reminded of Peter's note that he was going to read to MJ explaining who he was and what she meant to him, but he doesn't read it to her because he wants to keep her safe. After what had happened to Aunt May, he chose a life of self-exile to protect MJ and Ned. He is a sad, selfless young man, and no one can go through life like that. Let's look at all the choices the writers made to get Peter from being a sad loner and force him to connect to the people he loves. They had the entire world of the Marvel Universe at their fingertips, but they didn't just stick in random characters for fan service or because it would have made for a cool scene. Every choice was made to bring the theme to life. That restraint is the sign of writers serving the story rather than just going nuts because they have access to a fun box of toys. The characters they used to build the story were Gan Gray, Frank Castle, Bruce Banner, and of course, Aunt May. Yes, they also had Florence Pugh as Black Widow, and she was great, but I see her role in this more as plot help than character help. And she also works as comic relief. She does help drive the theme home later in the movie when she's FaceTiming with Peter and sees MJ and Ned and says, "I'm glad to see Sad Boy has friends," which is nice. Let's look how the other characters work so well to bring out the theme. Gan Gray is the main antagonist, and they do a bait and switch making you think Scorpion is going to be the main villain, which was also cool. This is the third iteration of Gan Gray, but they do an interesting twist on her. From an action plot aspect, she's a great villain. She gives Spider-Man a challenge and forces him to up his game. But she has the ability to hop into minds. So she hops into Peter's and discovers the note intended for MJ and Ned. That was a great way to bring MJ and Ned into the story organically. If there had just been some crazy coincidence that put them in jeopardy, it would have felt too convenient. She brought them into the story as a way to get to Peter, which is exactly what he was trying to avoid by living in exile, proving that withdrawing from the world will not solve your problems. The scene where we think MJ starts to remember Peter and kisses him, only to realize it's Gan Gray all along, is one hell of a gut punch. But it's also a message to the audience. It isn't going to be this easy. MJ is not just magically going to remember him. It's a nice touch that Gene says something like, "Memory restored because of true love's kiss?" MJ would have barfed at that. It would have felt like Deus Ex Machina if her memories were restored that easily, but making us think they were restored even for just a minute gave us hope. Then they kicked us squarely in the balls. I'll get back to Gan Gray later, but let's hop over to Bruce Banner. Bruce has made a device that keeps the Hulk at bay. Peter picks his brain to try to create a similar inhibitor to suppress the spider DNA inside him. The DNA is spiking because he's feeling too much emotion, too much trauma. Let's look at that from a psychological perspective. He wants to suppress his emotions rather than deal with them. Feeling a feeling is too inconvenient, so his instinct is to shut it off. I love that it's MJ who questions whether this is a good idea. She's a version of MJ who doesn't remember Peter, but she's the same strong woman that he fell in love with. And she's right. Turning off your emotions isn't the answer. This is tapping into a very guy thing. Don't show feelings, don't feel feelings. There's a lot of talk about the male loneliness epidemic, but this kind of stuff has been going on forever. Men had the tendency to go to our caves, to not reach out when we need help, to bury our feelings and pretend everything's okay. Refusing to cry when you're sad is kind of like putting out forest fires as soon as they start. It seemed like a good idea 50 years ago, but what happened was the part of the forest that should have burned away naturally and led the way to new growth just kept getting thicker and thicker for decades. So now, when a forest fire starts, the undergrowth is so overgrown with fuel that the fire is way too big to stop. You hold in your emotions for a few decades, eventually you're gonna pop. I did a quick short where I said this movie made me cry, and movies rarely make me cry, and that's not me trying to act macho. Not crying isn't a good trait, it's a fault, and I think it's a fault a lot of guys have. For example, my mother passed away a few years ago. I didn't cry at the funeral. I was trying to be strong for my dad and my sister, but there was a voice in my head saying, "Hey stupid, your mom just died, cry you idiot." But I couldn't. A few days later, my wife told me it isn't healthy to hold it all in. She said, "Let's watch a sad movie because you need to bawl your eyes out." I had never seen Sophie's Choice. I won't ruin it if you haven't seen it, but I knew what the choice is, and guess what? I didn't cry at a movie normal people cry at. So next I watched Schindler's List and finally cried, but not until the end where the real survivors put rocks on Oskar Schindler's grave. Happy sad gets to me more than actual sad. Part of my inability to cry at movies is because I'm a writer and I see characters as the other writer's chess pieces that they move into position for effect. When normal people are crying at a death scene in a movie, my reaction is something like, "Well, of course they killed off the mentor. The hero has to go it alone." But it's also a guy thing. We suppress things in an unhealthy manner. My son and I both cried at Spider-Man Brand New Day, and my wife didn't, which is a complete role reversal for our household. And I think it has to do with both of us understanding that guys have a hard time reaching out to people when they need to. We shut ourselves off, and this movie hits close to home. Granted, I've been low-hanging fruit lately. If you watch any of my other videos, you know my wife spent the last 2 years battling leukemia. She beat it, but as you can imagine, I had some dark thoughts these past few years, so a movie with a guy going on without the love of his life hit a little too close to home. I also have a son in college, and seeing him thrive because of the friends he's made me really feel for Peter, who's just a kid who should be hanging out with his friends, enjoying life instead of living alone, fighting crime anonymously. The next character that is vital to Peter's arc is Frank Castle. When I saw the Punisher in the trailer, I thought, wow, that's cool, the Punisher is gonna up the action and escalate things. But in this movie, he did so much more. He serves as a dark reflection for Peter. Peter chose to cut himself off from the world to protect the ones he loves. He uses Frank as a role model. He thinks this is what we heroes have to do. Frank, of course, tells him, "If you think my family alive, you think I'd hide behind a mask?" He's a great kick in the ass that Peter really needs. Peter takes MJ home and has a great moment with Ned, where the two of them act like the best friends they are, even if Ned has no idea how close they really are. They play with Legos like they used to, and this to me is like the modern day version of Kevin Costner having a catch with his dad in Field of Dreams. Yeah, I cried. You bet your ass I cried. A little later, Peter infiltrates the lab and fights the Hand and the other guards. He loses his inhibitor, but like MJ had told him, he needs to feel his feelings to be who he is. He realized that he is Peter Parker and he is Spider-Man. He doesn't have to choose. He doesn't have to hide behind a mask, just like Frank told him. So the human connections got him to be a better version of himself. Then there's Aunt May. She only has one scene, but it is a doozy. Throughout the movie, Jean Grey is trying to get into Peter's mind, but he keeps booting her out until the final showdown. She gets into his mind during his conversation with Aunt May, the conversation that we never got to see until now. These kinds of movies where the villain learns a secret about the hero, it's usually to give them information that they use against the hero later. This scene was the opposite. Aunt May consoles Peter after she discovered he was Spider-Man. She offers to share his burden. She tells him she understands the enormous responsibility he has and assures him that she will be there to support him. In this version, Jean gets the loving consolation that she should have gotten from her mother. In that moment, we realize she is not a villain. She is someone just like Peter. And if she had someone like Aunt May in her life, things may have gone differently. This powerful scene becomes her redemption and a healing moment for Peter. He offers to be there for Jean because he knows she needs human connection, just like he does. Unfortunately, happiness is short-lived as Peter senses a bullet from Punisher's gun. He saves Jean, but ends up in the hospital where Frank sits by his side while he recovers. When he leaves the hospital after Punisher dons the Spider-Man mask to help him sneak out, Peter stands amongst his supporters and feels the love that the whole city has for him. Not just for Spider-Man, for him. He realizes now he is worthy of love and human connection. He had spent the last few years kind of like the giving tree, giving more and more of himself to his own detriment. He realizes now that being a hero doesn't mean having to be a martyr. Other movies have done the arc of the guy who goes from I work alone to realizing that no one could do it all alone. Shrek, The Incredibles, James Bond, just to name a few. But the thing that's touching about Peter is that he doesn't shut himself off from people because he thinks they slow him down or that he doesn't need them. He shuts himself off from people because he loves them and doesn't want to burden them, even though he knows he needs them. There was a part of me during the movie that hoped Jean Grey would visit MJ and Ned and zap their memories of Peter back, but I'm glad they didn't go that route. That would have been cheating, and the writers knew this. Peter had just done a hell of a lot of work. He earned the love and friendship he deserved. That brings us to the last scene with Ned, and I'm glad it was Ned and not MJ. A lot of stories end with the hero kissing the love interest, but I love that this movie illustrated the importance of friendship. So yeah, I didn't cry at Sophie's choice, but I cried at two young dudes bonding over a cool handshake. And I think I needed a good cry after what I've been through these last few years. My wife was right, as usual. I'm Mike Palesci, and I think way too much about theme and story and structure. If that's something you're into, check out my novel, Falling into Shadow. I put the first 3 chapters of the ebook and audiobook on YouTube for free. And by the way, I'm knee-deep into the second book, and 2 of the younger characters, Isaac and Garima, are going through similar things that Peter and MJ did, so that is yet another reason this movie hit me so hard. Theme. Why did your high school English teacher have to make it seem so boring?